sound money. The gold standard was ridiculous and old-fashioned. We had to get rid of that. And government needed to be bigger. And they said it needs to be regulated. And they also believed in the Keynesian idea that you can create jobs by having a world empire and fighting wars. So all of these ideas were pervasive throughout the system. Republicans and Democrats both accepted these views to our detriment. But today, something else is happening. They've had their chance. They've had their 70 to 80 years of controlling our economy and controlling the people, controlling our foreign policy, and this is what they've given it. So it's time we heard a new message. And to me, that new message is a different understanding of economics. Not brand new. It's been around, but it's been refined. In this century, it's been especially refined, and partially in the last century, it's been refined, and it's called Austrian free market economics. And I was delighted to hear that you actually even have an opportunity in this school to study Austrian economics if you look around and pay attention. I think that's wonderful. But our policies have failed completely and totally. In the last decade, we've lost a couple million jobs that aren't likely to come back soon. We have a couple million less people working, and yet the population in the last 10 years increased by 26 million people. And they wonder why our country's poorer. We aren't producing. We are living off past wealth. At the same time, we're living off our borrowing power. We have deceived the people of the world to trust us because we will protect the value of our dollars, and they keep taking our dollars, and we keep getting lazier and lazier. We do not do the work. We borrow, and we spend, and we live beyond our means. And just this 2 years ago, it was announced through the marketplace, enough is enough. We can't do it any longer, and some changes have to occur. So far, the changes have not been good in Washington. The good changes have been outside of Washington, with people like you who are waking up and deciding that the crowd of people we have in Washington has to be changed. We have to have new ideas and different viewpoints, and more faith and confidence in sound money and free markets. Yeah. Since the breakdown of the marketplace 2 years ago, our government has spent $3.7 trillion. This includes everything that the Fed did by creating money out of thin air and everything that the Congress spent. And they said, yes, but we're improving. We've turned a corner. We've had a couple blips on government statistics. You know, the old-fashioned way, if you spent $3.7 trillion, you should have had a gigantic upward and a lot of production. But actually, there was no growth at all. The claim is that if you measure GDP increase, which has many shortcomings, using it as a measurement, it's gone up $100 billion. But if you take into consideration inflation, it actually went down. Where did the $3.7 trillion go? What happened? We're suffering from it. The people suffer from it. They still have, high cost of living, less jobs, losing houses. But who got bailed out? The guys that were making all the money when the bubble was being inflated. And they come in and they get the money. They get the bailouts. They're getting interest. They're getting loans from the Federal Reserve at 1%, and they loan back to the government and make 2 or 3 or 4%. They're making a killing. At the same time, the people are suffering. It's characteristic of what Austrian economics teaches that eventually, when you destroy a currency, you wipe out the middle class. And we're witnessing the wiping out of the middle class. There's a large number of people who are suffering. There are people who don't have jobs and wish they could get jobs, and they're in over their heads. At the same time, the people who should have been bailed out got bailed out. I'm not infrequently asked on television, they say, yes, but don't you think we would have had a depression by now if we wouldn't have done that? I said, yeah, maybe the people on Wall Street would have had a depression, but now the depression's with the people, and it should be the other way around. We just don't need it to research. For this. We have lost our way because we've lost our understanding and conviction that freedom works and that the marketplace is more productive than central economic planning. That is what they accepted when they accept Keynesian economics. that we don't want socialism in America, but we want help. We want the government to be the lender of last resort, to pick up all the pieces, take care of people from cradle to grave. At the same time, it'll be modified socialism, and it will make sure there's equal distribution of wealth. What it did was it destroyed the wealth-producing elements in our society and indebted us generations to come, which now is being required to be paid off. So this argument that this government consensual economic plan is completely fallacious. There was a time when we believed and we understood that free people would work hard. We are a free people because we have our rights to our lives naturally given to us, or God given to us, that we own our lives and they are our lives. We have our right to our life, but we also have our right to our liberty, and we ought to have the right to the fruits of our labor. Revolution is completed, the peaceful and intellectual revolution, we will see that the Fed will be removed, but we will also repeal the 16th Amendment, and we will prohibit the government from taxing our nation. To make that point. For young men, they make the point that they owe you because you're required to register just in case they need you to go off and fight some civil war. And the other thing that they do, of course, is they've introduced this notion of income tax rather recently, like 1913. It hasn't been with us since the beginning. But this whole idea that the government can determine what percentage of the money you can keep. Now, the notion in Washington, and some conservative Republicans slip into saying this, but mostly liberals who like the spending, they make the assumption if they cut your taxes, you have to mark it down as a cost of government. Which is the assumption made that they own everything, and what they allow you to keep is a cost to them. So it's these perceptions that are wrong. It's the perception that you own property, which is false. You don't own property. You manage property. It's in your title, but you're going to pay plenty of taxes, and you're going to follow all the rules and regulations, and there are going to be dozens and dozens of local, up to state, and now even the encroachment of regulations internationally by the WTO and the United Nations, and I'll tell you what, old-fashioned belief in private property works and can work and would protect the property, would protect the people. That's what we need, an emphasis on property ownership. Another responsibility of government in a free society is to protect contracts. Contracts are important. That's what makes a market work. You make promises, and you are obligated to fulfill those promises. And if not, the government should be involved in making sure that that is taken care of. But today, the government breaks more promises than they enforce. For instance, there has been many times over the many years that they have broke their promises on the monetary issue. The government had promised at one time to pay their bonds off in gold, and individuals promised to pay their bonds off in gold. But even at the Civil War period and in the Depression, the government just reneged on this. They removed it and said, oh no, you don't have to pay in gold. They did the opposite. The government is supposed to be there to protect the honesty of money, and now they're the chief counterfeiters. So we have allowed our government to get totally out of control. Somebody said if only Congress weren't in session so much, we would be better off. But the problem is it's irrelevant. Congress has practically made themselves irrelevant. You think you need the Congress to go to war? No, the president decides when to go to war. Now you think you don't have enough money, well you go to the Fed and you get a check. The Fed can create money out of thin air. They can give money to foreign governments, foreign central banks, and international financial organizations without the permission of Congress. And then if you ask to look at the books, they turn this down. So it's absolutely out of control. Our CIA is totally out of control. They work in secrecy. They initiate wars. They drop bombs on civilians and kill civilians around the world. And they're not supposed to be in a military operation. Matter of fact, they shouldn't even be doing most of the things that they do. the whole idea that the government is under control right now is not true. Our executive branch writes laws, and they write regulations. Those are laws. They shouldn't do this. And if the president not too long ago said, well, if Congress doesn't rapidly hurry up and do this, pass this law dealing with the environment, I'll just write an executive order. You know, I think it was somebody with the Clinton administration said, stroke of the pen, law of the land. Kind of cool. I mean, they think that's funny. It's kind of dangerous. It's kind of horrible to think that we have allowed it. We can't just blame the executive branch or the legislative branch. We, the people, have allowed this to happen. But fortunately, right now, why we should be so excited is that people are waking up and they're saying enough is enough. We're not going to surrender. The moral high ground on arguing our economic policies. The left and the interventionists and the socialists say they care about people. We who believe in liberty don't care about people. We care and make sure that they have free medical care and free education and make sure they have jobs. And look at the results. Jobs are going by, they're losing their houses, the educational system is dysfunctional. Thank goodness that we still have the right, and hopefully we can keep it, that we can have homeschooling to sort of counteract some of the problems. I don't know what's wrong with what the Republicans had in their platform back in 1980. Remember the old days? When we get in office, we're going to get rid of the Department of Education. We don't need it. But what happened in the year 2000? Finally, the Republicans, after all those years, get control of the House and the Senate and the presidency. Now they're going to clean house and get their house in order. So what did they do? They doubled the size of the Department of Education. They ran up the deficit, all the spending, expanded the wars around the world, passed Sarbanes-Oxley, Feingold, McCain-Feingold, and prescription drug programs. That's all by the Republicans. Yep. Now,